So, when it comes to lead generation, the best thing to be doing in today's market is challenging your suppliers. There's a lot to be said for empowering marketers, and they should be applauded for asking the right questions when it comes to lead generation because there's just such a wide array of suppliers, and what goes into the process of generating leads. And this opens up a whole discussion about what the right questions to be asking are. So, thanks for joining me, Edith. Could you start us off and give us an idea on the best places to start?
Absolutely. And I don't envy the challenges that marketers face when they're going out into the market to source a new lead generation supplier. There's a lot of noise out there. So, how do you really cut through that noise, go beyond just the top level CPL and actually find a supplier that you trust who's going to generate you high quality leads for your business? So, I think I always recommend when starting these initial conversations with a potential supplier is to really ask and establish straight away whether or not you're speaking to someone who is a first party publisher. So, what I mean is someone who's generating those leads directly from their own databases, from their own audience, and then passing those back to you. Or are you speaking to someone who represents a third party aggregator? So, someone who's purchasing your leads from an external source and then passing those back to you. And the reason this is a really good place to start is because it's going to shape the rest of the conversation and the questions that you ask off the back of it. So, really, once you've established are they first party or third party, you want to then dig into things like lead transparency. So, it's critical to really understand the journey that your lead has been on from, downloading that asset through to having their data passed back to you is critical in terms of being able to then put that lead into an effective nurture program once they come back to you. So when you work with a first party publisher like Headley Media, because we own our own database and we're generating those leads directly from our audience, we can actually provide you with a complete overview in terms of when that lead received the email in their inbox through to downloading that content, through to engaging with it, through to having their data validated and then passed back to you. Whereas when you're working with a third party, because it's coming from external sources, you're not going to have the same level of data and detail with each lead. It's going to be very much more that top level lead, name, details, information, and not the kind of more granular data that I just mentioned. But also, there's a big piece that needs to be done here in terms of asking about the compliance of that data as well. So, having that transparency and understanding how your leads have consented to have their data shared with you is also critical because there's no grey areas there as well. So, when you're working with a first party publisher, because they own all their own data, they're able to provide you with information into the lead's consent, especially when you're working on a campaign that is on a global scale as well. So understanding all the different regional compliances, making sure there's no grey areas there as well. You can actually use that data when it comes back to you. You've got complete visibility of all those different areas. Whereas with a third party, you're not necessarily going to know or have the same levels of confidence in terms of how that data has consented to be used. And so that can also, again, kind of impact what your next stages are. Do you have to do more work in terms of making sure they're compliant, or can you start using them straight away? And then once you've kind of like asked those sorts of questions and you're happy with the answers, because you want to make sure as well that you've got the confidence to really ask questions about the answers that you're given to your original questions as well, so that you feel like you've actually, you feel like the nail has been hit on the head in terms of you understanding exactly all those sort of different areas. But you're also going to want to know things about where your content is hosted, for example. So, you've spent or you've invested a lot of time and money in creating these beautiful pieces of content that really are about shining a light on your brand as an innovator or as a business leader in that particular sector. So, you want to also know how it's then going to be positioned to the market. So when you work with a first party publisher, you'll understand that actually, because they own their own brands, they own their own websites, you'll have that kind of full visibility in terms of how your piece is then presented to the audience. You'll see the synopsis, how your logos are used, how the images are used as well. And you also have that sign off in terms of being able to say, yes, I'm happy for this to be published on the site, and you'll have that confidence in how that piece is being used. Whereas with the third party, they're potentially publishing on multiple platforms, and you're not going to have the same level of visibility. And so you don't have the same levels of confidence that, your brand is being represented in the light that you intended it to. And also, there's a conversation that has to happen around kind of the engagement levels as well. So, if you're hosting your content on a site that has been specifically designed to nurture readers through their buying journeys, through their research journeys, there's no distractions. The engagement is potentially higher on your piece because they've given it the time that they've needed to really kind of get out the main, get out what they needed from that piece. There's no distractions, there's no adverts, there's no, links through to social media buttons or anything like that. They can just focus on your content. Whereas, potentially you're hosting your content with a third party on a platform that has all those distractions. And so you're not going to get the same level of engagement.
That's true. I mean, we've only just started to dig down into what is behind a content syndication campaign for lead generation. And there's so many considerations already there in what you've just summarized. It really comes down to the quality, doesn't it? I mean, these MQLs that you're buying and filling the pipeline with, there's just such an array of how much difference there could be between somebody who is aggregating and supplying, and that's fine. They could meet the same ICP, they could meet the same criteria, but they've been through a whole different journey and experience with the brand. So it really depends on that, and that's what's some of the more important factors in determining it. Because otherwise you are left just trying to assess based on price and based on the cost per lead at the end of the day. And that's not a great place as a marketer to feel like you're forced into, because yes, it might be a good, like on paper for the finance team to make a decision based on what's cheaper, but actually what's going to convert, what's going to be better for the pipeline, what's going to, really add the velocity into those marketing leads there, to help them on their journey and that ultimately convert in the end. So some really good points there.
Definitely. It's all about the return on investment at the end of the day, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. So thank you for that. I think that's given us kind of a really good base to go off of some of the considerations and metrics to kind of be looking at. So in contrast to this, we often see a confusion in marketers focusing on metrics that aren't maybe the most useful in determining the success of their campaigns for lead generation or the quality of supplier. They might think that they're focusing on kind of these good metrics that they're used to dealing with, but like sometimes these metrics are a little bit flawed. So firstly, we have that they might be asking us about our overall audience figures. Could you walk us through the considerations around this?
Absolutely. And it's something that we are asked about all the time in terms of overall audience figures. And it's a good question. But actually, what we like to focus on is what is your campaign criteria? What is your targeting criteria? So the job levels, the geo location requirements, the industries, the company sizes, if you're having any intent keywords attached to that, and also factors such as how long you want your campaign to run and the core objectives. So, are you looking for leads that have had a single asset download or a double asset download? And are there qualifying questions involved in that as well so that you can filter out certain leads that don't meet a particular, point in their buying journey for you to invest in? So we don't necessarily communicate that sort of top level audience number, because what we do is we take all that data that we've got from you and we apply it, and we will actually supply you with a max guaranteed lead volume based on that particular criteria. So that's the amount of leads that we are guaranteeing we can generate for you for that particular campaign. And the reason that we do it this way is because every campaign is completely different. Everyone's targeting is completely different. So it's about understanding what is relevant for your campaign. So that total audience number isn't going to be relevant once we've applied all these different filtering and all this different criteria.
Absolutely. You could start off with the biggest figure and say, yeah, we've got millions of
Yeah.
people in the database. Of course you do, but it's people that are, are they actively subscribed versus are they just a contact? That kind of thing. I think it is really important to remember everything that goes into that, and the end goal when you're working with a content syndication supplier, your cost per lead is based on how many leads you want, and how many leads you want is based on how many people are in the market. It's based on all of, like, exactly as you said, all of the criteria that you just mentioned. So yeah, it's very easy to get distracted with figures that don't actually mean anything.
Totally.
So that's really interesting. I think it kind of goes into this kind of wider subject around why people are asking the question. So, are they trying to benchmark their own open rates and things like this on email? Like, I know it's been talked about. A lot of clients kind of come through with questions around what email open rates might be. But I think it's just so important to remember them in context. What are the kind of things that you see asked, and the considerations that you would recommend?
Yeah, no. So when it comes to emails and the promotions that we use to actually generate those leads, because we do use emails within our campaigns, we are asked about those, metrics in terms of open rates and click-through rates, but it actually comes down to what is the measure of success for your campaign. So as I mentioned earlier, the targeting is so different for each campaign. Why would an average open rate really be that relevant when the targeting is so different, and that email has gone to a completely different audience than someone else's campaign has as well? So how can you really, like you say, benchmark against it? And our guarantee to our clients is to deliver on the guaranteed volume of leads that we have quoted. So that measure of success is delivering those engaged leads with that consent for follow-on communication. That is the end goal with this campaign. And also with click-through rates, not to sound a bit like a broken record, but it's the same sort of idea as well. It's like, because every campaign is completely different, the click-through rates are going to be completely different. So what is the value in knowing that information? The value is in generating those leads, which is what you're paying for with that CPL as well. You're not paying for open rates and click-through rates. You're paying for the leads that come back to you, and come back to you at a point where they have engaged with your content, they have that brand familiarity, they're ready to go into a nurture program and have follow-on communication from you. And that is the value of running these campaigns. And also as well, in a world where there's so many different kind of like spam filters and junk folders and all these sorts of things as well, that's also going to have a huge impact when you're benchmarking against other providers. So with us, what we like to do is we keep our email templates uniform. They have a lovely call to action on them. There's no advertising. There's no sort of like large glary images that are going to get stuck in spam filters. And also as well, our audience knows and recognizes our brand. So when that email lands in their inbox and it says it comes from one of our 7 brands, so we'll say IT Corporate as an example, they know why, because they've subscribed to that database. They subscribe and they know us. They trust the resource that's going to be in that email. And so we're going to get that open rates, well, we're going to get that open, and we're going to see them engaging with that email and clicking through to that content. So fundamentally, to go back to the question, it's the data that's relevant, it's the leads that come back, and that is what you're paying for, and that is the measure of success of a campaign.
Absolutely. There's so much to consider there. And you've put it really succinctly. You can't judge yourself based on what your supplier is doing for you. You're working with Headley Media and Headley Media's brands like IT Corporate because they are recognized. That's what you're utilizing there. So it's the value of that. And that our process as Headley Media is so highly optimized. The email rates that we get, the click-through rates, as you've just described, they're extremely highly optimized so that they do get the downloads and the leads that are then supplied back.
Yeah, of course. And it is something that we are asked all the time. And I think we live in we work in a society or in a world where you go onto websites or you receive proposals and they do have really big, flashy top line volumes on there and, audience numbers. And so it feels natural to only ask about these things. But actually, when it comes to your individual campaign and the criteria that you have for it, is that top line number actually even relevant for you? So once we've unpacked who your target job titles are, the industries, the company sizes, the geolocations, we've also going to look at any intent keywords on there. So all those things are completely different for every single campaign. And then we also take into consideration things like how long you want your campaign to run for and what level of engagement you want those leads to have had. So is it a single touch download? Is it a 2 asset download? Are you including any qualifying questions in there as well? So what we do here at Headley Media is we actually take all that wonderful data that you've given us about your target audience, and then we will give you back, leaning on our 16 plus years of experience in lead generation, we will provide you with a max volume of guaranteed leads that we can deliver with your campaign. And that is the data that is relevant. So, understanding, how many leads that you can get that completely matches your criteria is a lot more useful than actually knowing what that top line audience number is. So that's how we do it. We will only generate leads from your specific target audience.
Absolutely. Just feels so much more succinct and so much more relevant. I mean, anyone could say any number that could be the total audience figure. It's about what's relevant and, the benefit of the subscribed readership, people that are engaged in that audience,
Yeah,
ready to receive information from the brand.
definitely.